beautiful day for another Big Five analysis. In today's video, we'll be looking at Ethereum, Solana, SUI, XRP, and even Bitcoin as well. But we're going to start this one off on a completely different note here. I want to share with you a poll that I ran on my X account earlier this morning. And the question of the day is, Bitcoin is essentially back at all-time highs. And the question is your portfolio also worth more or less than it was in January when Bitcoin first saw this region during that time? And it would appear that if we combine the no, I'm down and don't you dare ask, not laughing at these people or anything like that, but just as an enlightening sort of question and study here, almost or over 80% of people very likely, not seeing greater value on their account during this time. So it makes you wonder. Anyways, of course, many have been lost deep inside that shitcoin drawer of death and destruction. It is what it is, man. Many good soldiers have been lost along the way. But anyways, going over here to Ethereum, because Ethereum's finally done it. It's finally fucking done it. Following the damn LARP lines right here, hitting our first target of about 2,500, also around that 382 fib. I thought it was going fucking crazy leading up into this region just because, despite your thoughts on Ethereum, despite my thoughts on Ethereum, it's like, I still think it's going to fucking rally. Might not be as impressive as other things, but definitely a major laggard at this point. So there we go. Anyways, now that we have seen that 382 hit at about 2,500, the question becomes, what do you expect next? Or are there higher targets? Yes, there are higher targets. Could this one maybe pull back a little bit first before higher targets are met? Definitely possible, obviously. If it does, I'd be looking maybe somewhere around, 2150 or so. Just anywhere around there is fine. But ultimately, there is actually a good chance that this one will even continue from here without a pullback. If we go into the daily time frame, we can see that the daily stochastic oscillator will even cross back up in the bullish control zone if Ethereum today can close above 23.63, which is actually about a $0.50 above right now. So it's off to a good start, but of course it's a long day left to go. On top of that, I want to then define what would the next area of interest be. Well, there's two major things kind of in confluence here at around about 2,700. That would be one, that white 200 simple average, which, I think just about everything in this market, even the shittiest of shitcoins, probably get bounces somewhere around there. And that would also be directly in alignment with the 50% retracement level as well. So, I do think that Ethereum will get somewhere around there. We are starting to see extremes on daily volatility, but, this is just the first bar. So I really would expect it to, remain in there for at least somewhat of a prolonged period of time, as this one does continue upwards and onwards. So moving on from there, I did want to now address the higher term timeframes for Ethereum because there's something, in my opinion, of great relevance here, and it would be the monthly RSI hidden bullish divergence that is actually building and pending confirmation, which would essentially happen at the end of this month, assuming that Ethereum can basically close anywhere above 2,000. So anywhere above 2,000, yes, you get hidden bullish divergence, and then at that point, I think 2,700 is a given. Maybe it even gets a try all the way up to 3,000 or so. Tags the 618 fib here at just over 3,100, also kind of in alignment with that last mega massive breakdown, from early February. So that would also make sense, but of course, one thing before the next. And on top of that, you can imagine that at some point, although it has been it's taken a lot of patience. At some point, the monthly stochastic oscillator will turn around again. And as of right now, it would actually require a closure above 33.69, so nearly $1,000 above where price action currently is. I think that that's probably unlikely for this month of May, but I can almost 100% assure you that when we get into June, this number should come down for that pivot. And I imagine it's going to be simultaneously hitting this trend line. So if we do see the sort of that trifecta where you get hidden bullish divergence on the monthly RSI confirmed, plus Ethereum, plus the monthly stochastic oscillator on Ethereum hitting this trend line and turning up, assuming that this number comes down, hopefully to where Ethereum's kind of at right now, that would be a really, really, really good setup for Ethereum more long term. And at that point, I think 3,000 is a given. Maybe even retags these highs over here are possible, but I'd take things one step at a time. I mean, it's no secret that Ethereum has been the laggard of the major market cap coins pairings for this cycle. So that's usually not a great sign. But hey, even the laggards get their sun, their day in the sun usually near the end of the cycle. And that's what I kind of think that this rally is all about. But hey, just enjoy it while it lasts, of course. And then we should also go over the price action pivot for the short term. The price action pivot for the short term is actually significantly lower than where price action is right now at 1800. So it's not like super helpful. That's the full hour. This is the daily. Both of them in the exact same level. So this will very likely move up somewhere around 2200, or sorry, not 2200, but 2270 on a 4 hour time frame. I would imagine sometime today. So if you are looking for a bit of a short-term pullback, I'd be using that as a bit of a pivot for a closure below. And if that happens, yeah, you're probably looking at 2150. Maybe that's relevant to you. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But higher term timeframes, I would say still suggest that this thing wants to try overall higher than where it's currently found at about 2,500. Whether that takes a few weeks or another month or whatever, who knows? But yeah, that's essentially where I'm at right now. And we should go look at some of the Ethereum pairings as well. We can, of course, look at Ethereum Bitcoin. This one was bouncing off of the last mega macro low from way back on over here in 2019. This is very, very, very common to see. It is not necessarily a sign of strength, but of course, a bounce is a bounce. And this is the most green action on a monthly that it's seen in quite some time. Anyways, do I think that this one can bounce up more? Look, if you see Ethereum, making that charge up into the 3000s, I do think at some point you're going to get a rally towards that 382 level, which is a little bit less than a 2x from where things are at right now. So maybe this is the move. Ethereum finally going to outpace Bitcoin for what I think is very likely the last segment of this market. We can also look at Ethereum versus our Sol ETH. Let's look at Sol ETH. I suspect that Ethereum is likely Solana is putting in a reversal versus Ethereum, and it would appear that I think it is. I think it is right here. It is starting to break down. It has not entered into a real downtrend yet, though. So that is unconfirmed as of right now, but definitely potential. Do we have any sort of other indications here that this one will complete the reversal? I'm looking for something resembling bearish divergence on higher term timeframes. Monthly is actually not going to have it. Is weekly going to have it? It is going to load. And yes, it does have 1, 2, 3 drives. So a lot of the time you do see major reversals on higher term timeframes like a weekly of the 3 drive variety or more. So I'd say that this one does have a good potential, but it's actually not there right now. I'd be treating this one bearish as long as you're below the April highs, to be honest. And of course, it won't officially switch around until you take out the price action pivot here, which is 0.055, whatever hell number that is. We should also look at, we're going to do all the Ethereum pairs today. We should look at XRP Ethereum, or is it Ethereum XRP? No, it's XRP Ethereum. All right. This one also putting in its own reversal. Again, bearish divergence on the weekly RSI, multiple drives right there. I think that this one's coming down significantly. But again, if you do want to wait for the real reversal, the price action pivot is around 8,000 butyrols, or whatever the hell the underlying currency is right there. Anyways, moving on from there, let's get into SUI. SUI is another one that has been doing really, really well during this current segment of the market cycle. So it is one of the best. It was, I would say, one of the best shitcoins that we did see go from from nothing to something during this cycle. So it's one of the big winners. And seen as this market cycle, probably extends into like July or September, I am starting to think maybe this one could actually retest the highs and perhaps make new all-time highs. It did indeed have about a 70 or 80, or yeah, about almost a 70% correction from the time that we called a high on this one. And looking at it as of current, I do think that there is actually potential for more. But first thing, one before the next, of course, looking at the daily time frame, we can see that it is right at the 618 fib right here. So this would be a good area to spend a little bit of time going sideways in. I don't think that there's a humongous rush for this one right now, because it was such a good actor earlier on. I think that this one, as we just looked at, probably going to get outpaced by Ethereum. Or actually, we should look at that parent. We did not look at that one. Anyways, as far as the 4-hour price action pivot goes, we can see that the current price action pivot is 381, meaning that as long as SUI is above 381 on a 4-hour closing basis, upside actually from here is still more likely. We can talk about targets to the upside in the same way that we did for Ethereum. But of course, just like Ethereum, if it does take out that 4-hour price action pivot, in this case below 381 on a closing basis, I would be looking for a short-term correction first. Maybe not necessarily like a full-on reversal from here just yet, but perhaps back down to like $3.50, let's say. As far as the daily goes, this one does not reverse as long as you're above the 382, which is 311 as of right now, and that's effectively the low of this week. Anyways, and I mean there is a little bit of bearish divergence building right here, but would need to confirm that local high first. So I'd give it the benefit of the doubt, at least in this, area. Anyways, I just want to make sure that I'm hitting all my notes over here. Yeah, okay, so what would be the target, assuming that it does not violate the 4-hour price action pivot? Well, I mean, like I said, it is right at the 618 right here. So this area really does make sense for a good pullback. But if it does start to close above there, especially on a weekly, which is basically $4, I think your next obvious area of interest is going to be about 4.5 or so. Still not necessarily all-time highs, but looking better and better, of course. Anyways, let's actually now look at SUI versus Ethereum. Okay, there is not that pairing natively on an exchange, so let's do it this way. And I mean, overall, yeah, SUI is going to be much better than Ethereum, but is this one putting in a swing high right here and it's going to come down? Yeah, I would say so. 1, 2, 3 drives a bearish divergence off of these last few highs. So I would be, I'd be looking for this one to play out like a pretty decent pullback, somewhere back down around those April lows or so. Does it actually reverse, and complete a real reversal? Can't really say that right now, but that'd still be a pretty fucking massive move from where it's at. So I would expect Ethereum is going to be generally doing better than most of the other major market cap coins. Again, I look at this, to be honest, as like an end of cycle type thing, but the end of cycle during these times can go for another few months, or as I've been saying, about 2 to 4 months. So again, putting a date on it, at least from what I see right now, like middle of July to end of September, somewhere in that vicinity seems about right to me. Anyways, moving on, we got Solana here. Solana, also having a pretty decent rally, but just not as interesting as the other ones, to be fair right now. Solana, we've been looking at this one to at some point get somewhere between the 382 level and at least a 50% retracement. So that'd give us a targeted region between 173 and 196, or just round it up like 180 to 200. I think that sounds a little bit easier. Anyways, we have hit the lower end of that region for right now. Is there going to be a pullback from there? If it does, 160 is fine. That's completely okay. If we go down to the 4-hour time frame, we can see the price action pivot, even on a time frame like this, is still, all the way down at like 145. So not going to be having a reversal anytime soon. It can easily afford a pullback and still put in a higher low. And I do think that this one, based off of the strength of this rally, based off of the fact that the weekly stochastic also is turning back up. And what about the monthly? Oh, monthly. Okay, we just won't look at that one. Bullish vibes only. And the 10-day over here as well. I do think that this one very likely does go to around about $200. I think at most it might get around about 220 or so, but I'd feel still very confident saying that something like this has very likely seen the highs for this cycle. If it does make a new high, I'd be surprised. I'm not like opposed to it. Of course, I can be massively fucking wrong on these. On these assumptions, but finally the LARP line's playing out, and we're finally hitting some of these presumed targets that we've had, and that we've been speaking about now for what feels like the last month and a half, basically since early April, when most of these things, initiated their bounces. So yeah. Anyways, I'm just making sure that I hit all my notes over here for this one. Oh, the daily time frame I did not recognize is wait. God damn it, my bad. Let's go over here and let's go to the Solana. Yeah, the daily time. Wait, no, it does not have that. My notes are wrong. Fucking bastard. Screwed it up. It looks like, yeah, I made a note that there's hidden bullish divergence on this one, but there's not actually. In fact, there literally cannot be right there, or it's just not, it's just quite literally not there. Yeah, anyways, Solana, again, does it pull back down to 160 first? Well, I would just be looking at like a 4-hour time frame. If it can close below 167.5, sure. But I don't think that you get much below there without, an extension of this run. Most higher term time frames looking pretty good here for continuation. Even the daily stochastic also continues to the upside above 158 today. So, does that equate to another test of the 200 simple officially at about 180? Sure. Probably a bit of a pullback there. I mean, if there is going to be a major rejection, that would be the area to be looking for. Personally, I do think that it will reach higher before there's any sort of potential major reversal. It might not be that much higher, like 200 to 220, but, not bad. Anyways, moving on from there, let's get into XRP. XRP is like a pretty simple one right here. Weekly time frame has a massive bullish engulfing dildo that is about to be confirmed upon tomorrow night's closure, assuming that it can remain above 233. 255 and a half, 255 and a half. And if it does, then yes, my notes were wrong because it's this one, XRP, that has that drive of hidden bullish evidence here and actually freshly getting back into the bullish control zone on the daily RSI. So overall, Ethereum, XRP in a little bit more of a stronger position. Pretty damn nice bounce off of the 200 simple, coming off of, this past week of price action. So overall, I think XRP is from the majors on the higher term timeframes. It is in the best position, except for Bitcoin, to be fair. But versus all the other ones, it is in the best position just from like a long-term perspective, just because it's still above all major moving averages here on the monthly time frame. In fact, the monthly stochastic oscillator might even cross back onto the upside at the end of this month if it does close above 273. So I'd be keeping a keen eye on that number, because if XRP can close above there, that would be my signal for retest of all-time highs and very, very likely new all-time highs. $4.50, $5, whatever the fuck the XRP army is now quoting as their presumed targets. Anyways, I feel like I'm missing something on this one. Maybe price action pivot here. Price action pivot is basically this past week's low or Tuesday's low at 208. As long as you're above there, you can just kind of assume some bullishness. What about some short-term upside targets for that? Again, already hit the 382. That's fine. 50% retracement level is 251 and 618 is 272. So I do think that it'll get somewhere in between at least these, probably before this month is over, but it needs to get above the 618 on the monthly closure in order for me to say, hey, this thing is like in a real threatening position to realistically make new highs on this run. So yeah, anyways, moving on, we got Bitcoin, the old corns, as our last one. We'll look at the weekly HPDR. The weekly HPDR did hit towards the 50% level, which is 104.5 to 105 region. This was, of course, for CME's closure, so this one's already done and dusted. And that actually does put Bitcoin in a pretty strong position to open up this next week. If it does open up above the 50% level, then perhaps we might actually see that move to the 61.8 level here, which is 110, which is a very, common target that we've been building up from several of the different things that we've been looking at. One of them was a MetaSignals daily setup that fired off like many weeks ago now. And the other one is the 5-day setup that we spoke about here, just the 5-day 5 EMA setup, which is so fucking simple. Just as long, anytime that the 5-day closes above the red 5 EMA, it opens along. And when it closes below, it closes that long. And if we go throughout the past, what is this, like 7-8 years, we can see the results from just playing such a simple strategy like this, and nice and up and to the right. That's what we like on our equity curves, just nice and steady and up and to the right. And I want to acknowledge here that this has a very low probability to win per any given trade, under 36%. But because the profit factor is so high, you get an equity curve like this. So for the people who are in the quant prime analysis, the quant prime AI service, I just want to remind you, like, a high win rate almost always comes at the expense of a lower profit factor, and you can make strategies both ways. And naturally, more trending strategies, will have a lower hit rate, but that profit factor is higher. So don't be afraid of that. I mean, it can actually work out incredibly well. If we go into the trade analysis, we can see that the average winning trade returned almost 30%. The average losing trade losing an average of 5.5%, and the average amount of bars in winning trades is 9 versus 2 in those losing trades. So going back into it here, we are very well, more than 2 bars into this trade already. We are on bar number 5. So this one is, it should be rather obvious at this point, but very likely going to be a winner. If we go all the way out to 9 bars, which again is the average, means there is going to be some variance. And yes, I have to be so careful when I talk about statistics, because lobotomized fucking morons out there do not necessarily understand that there is variance in these. But the average person watching this channel is Thank fucking God, not a lobotomized moron. Anyways, 9 bars out from that entry, which fired off again in early April, puts us at the end of May, actually. So if it does go for around the average of returns for those winning trades, that would be about 30%. And guess where that would be? Just below 110,000 bucks, effectively on current all-time highs. And there is potential for more after that as well, to be fair. But that would be sort of like the major area of interest for Bitcoin. And then on top of that, let's actually go over the quantum wave bound. See, this one, the fucking 1 hour scalping strategy has been just fucking working recently. This is one of those times, when volatility starts to rise up, that these sort of strategies, especially scalping strategies, for the quantum wave bounds becomes, extremely active, as you can see. Many trades over this past week and a half now, and doing quite well as well. It has taken one loss right here, a small loss, I would say, but a loss nonetheless. Then boom, nice scalp win, boom, nice scalp win, boom, big scalp win, and also another one this morning as well. So again, the quantum wave bands is definitely designed for, it's more newbie friendly, basically, just to not sugarcoat it. It's made for people who have a lot less experience. It's a more done for you type thing. You don't need to automate this if you don't want to. You don't even need to, you can manually execute these, and you don't need to even trade exactly as it's suggesting to open a long or close that long. But of course, you can use it to reference off of, knowing that, whenever you get a setup firing off, you're going to have a probabilistic entry in your favor. And of course, you can try it out for free for 7 days, by the way. It's just the teachable link in the description below. Same sort of deal with the Quant Prime service as well. But this is definitely for much more advanced people. Like, if you're newer, don't get the Quant Prime. It's going to be way too much over your head. Go with something like the quantum wave bounds. And then, of course, we've been getting a lot of questions recently on what is quickly becoming like my most newbie-friendly indicator over here, which is the price action pivots indicator. And you can try the same thing as well. 7 days for free. Again, we just want to get these tools in people's hands. You can decide for yourself if it's relevant to your interests or not, but pretty confident that there's something here for everyone now at this point. And with free trial, there's really no risk, and there's no hidden bullshit or anything like that as well. Anyways, that's where we'll end things for today. This video way too fucking long, but it's okay. I need to shut this one off now because I want to go to some boxing sparring practice. And other than that, I want to wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and respond to the poll, because I'm very interested to see. And in fact, we just had another 300 votes or so, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. Anyways, shutting off on that note. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.